Welcome again, everyone. For those who joined us a bit late, thank you very much for being here. Now we have the honor and the chance to get a glimpse of light and guidance from great Olympians. We will be looking at the road to the Olympics, the challenges facing athletes on their journey to the Olympics, and the impact of the global pandemic on Tokyo Olympics, and how do you envision that to progress. We have Mr. Willie Banks, World Athletics champion, three-time Olympian and former president of the U.S. Olympians Association. He served as chair of the U.S. Track and Field Athletes Advisory Committee, in addition to serving as the organization vice president. Welcome, Mr. Willie. Thank you very much for being us today.
Thank you so much, Nal. Thank you.
Mr. Samer Kamal, a favorite Olympian of mine, absolutely a hero that I look up to, someone who has an influence on many people around him in the local community, in the international community, a person who's introduced a lot of change to my life. And to that, I would like to introduce him to you on a personal level, more than just the professional level, but certainly he comes from a past of success, a future of success. He's the one who's leading the charge on this. He's won the Olympic bronze medal, as well as he's the former executive board member of the World Olympian Association and the current president of the Arab Canadian Sports Association. And thank you very much for being with us today, Mr. Samer. I'll hand it over to you to continue with the introduction about the ACSA and take it from there.
Thank you, Khalid, for the nice introduction. And I'm happy to have Willie with us today. Willie, he is like a legend of athletes in the world. So he made a lot of changes in the world. However, the Arab Canadian Sports Association was established recently. The idea of it is to support the athletes, not only the Arabs, all the athletes. Our focus on the Arabs who are in need, because some of the Arab athletes, they need more support because of some countries have some difficult situation, and some athletes have also some difficult situation to improve and to move on in their career. So we came in, have a great people with me. So we started with having an executive advisory committee who are helping us. Khalid is the chair of this committee. I have a good team starting like since 5 months. We start putting on the system together. We have a lot of events coming. One of them that it might be interesting to have a world conference, sports world conference every year to reward the athletes, not only for their achievement, also for their contribution to the community. So we are planning to have this and reward them to give the idea that the athletes is not only in the field getting medals or achieve or score goals, also we want them to achieve in their life in their community. So I don't want to talk much about everything because I want to take advantage that Willie with us to give more time to Willie. However, I'm so excited about today's forum. It's a great forum. I have a great people with us today in the forum. Also the audience, they are from many media around the world, some from India, some from Jordan, some from Egypt. So it's good that we will have a very good exposure about this forum. So that's it for now. So thank you.
Thank you, Samer. Mr. Banks, I'm so excited to hear what you have to say. I don't even think a question would be enough. I think a million of them would be even more interesting. I'd like to leave it to you. Walk us through how you see that road shaping up, and what's your view on what's going on in the world these days and the impact of that on the current upcoming Olympics. What would you think?
Thank you very much, both of you. And Samer, my good friend, when you invited me to this forum, I was so excited because we don't Recently, we haven't had a chance to work together, and I always found it to be such a uplifting experience to talk with you and to share experiences. So thank you. And this Arab Canadian Sports Association, what a great idea. I'm happy to support it, whatever I can do, because it's important that we do a cross-cultural association of athletes, because I believe athletes can do so much for the world because of their discipline, because of their philosophy, and because of their love for not only their nation, but the world. So thank you. And if I take a look at the challenges of the Olympic experience, it reminds me of the ancient, of what they used to say in ancient times, that a person must test one's mettle. And essentially what that meant was that a person had to be able to face adversity and to be challenged by hurdles that are that fall before them. And anyone who is able to overcome the hurdles, the challenges, the adversity that affects them, usually come out on the other end with success. And when I look at the list of people here today, I'm sure that each and every one of you are successful, not just because you had, you had wonderful experiences all your life, but it's the experiences that you faced that caused you to either change or to improve or to be more tenacious in your attitude. The greatest thing about being an athlete is learning to win, but also learning to lose. Because if you don't know how to lose, you can't be successful in winning. Without hard work and struggle, without being able to train harder, it's impossible to get better, because every day you have to push yourself to improve. So my experience with the Olympic Games, just to run through just a little bit, is one of adversity. I mean, it's an amazing. I grew up, of course, in the United States, which didn't have a lot of outlets where I grew up. There wasn't a lot of outlet. Fortunately, my father was a Marine in the military, so I had access to certain sport programs and facilities that I could be a part of. And it wasn't until 1976 that I was good enough athlete to actually try and make an Olympic Games. And in 1976, my father was so excited about the possibility of me making the Olympic Games that he actually went and took a loan out on our house, bought a camper and a new car to drive the camper to Montreal so he could watch me in the Olympic Games. But in the United States, you have to go to a competition before the Games. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the top 3, you get to go to the Olympic Games. If you, and that was it. No matter what, if you're in the top 3, you go to the Olympic Games. Well, my father was a very devout person, and he believed that I was going to make it. I was in 3rd place going into the last round, so I thought I was on the team. And right before the last few jumpers, one guy jumped 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters further than I did, and I was in 4th. So I was actually, that Games, that Olympic trials, I finished as an alternate. And I called my father. I'll never forget this. I called my father and I said, Dad, I finished 4th. I'm an alternate. I didn't make the team. And my father said over the phone, he said, son, well, I know you did the best you could and I'm proud of you. See ya. We're off to the Olympic Games. And my whole family went to the Olympic Games and I stayed home because they didn't have a ticket for me. But it made me tougher, right? I instead of just sitting there and being sad, I said, the next Olympic Games, I'm going to make it I'm going to be the best in the world. And in 1980, I was the best triple jumper in the world. I had not been defeated. And in 1980, our government said, we're not going to the Olympic Games because the Soviet Union, now Russia, had invaded Afghanistan. And so in order to protest that, we're not going to allow our Olympians to go to Moscow to the Olympic Games. So once again, wow, I faced the adversity. Well, that changed me. What it did was it made me want to get into the politics of sport. Mm-hmm. And so I joined the politics of sport. It also made me understand that amateurism was holding sport back. And so I got together with other athletes and we rewrote sport. We rewrote the law in the United States for sport. And we pushed the IOC to get rid of this whole amateurism thing. And that changed sport forever because we could actually make a living doing what we loved. So how does this really lead to this discussion about the pandemic and about the road to the Tokyo Olympic Games? Well, for me, it really hits home because as I've just explained to you, now later on, 84 and 88, I did make the teams and I had no problem, but it leads me to remember that had I not had these adversities, had I not, finished fourth, had I not been prevented from going to the Olympic Games by the US government, I would not have stayed in the sport. I would have gone on and done something else because heck, I would have been an Olympian, right? But I stayed in the sport. I stayed in the sport and I was on top of my game for 20 years. And it was the greatest experience I'd ever had. So that's number one. But number two, it showed me how important being able to overcome challenges were. So then we get to today. And I look at athletes today and they are facing something which they think no one else has ever faced before. We can't think that way. The best way to think about this is we have a challenge in front of us. It's time to test our mettle. How tenacious are we? How creative are we? And that's what is happening now. You take a look at sport. Christina was talking about how it's challenging to travel. Well, now she's come up with a way of doing it. She would never have thought of that if there wasn't a challenge in front of her. Everything is changing, and I believe changing for the good because people now are understanding just how valuable the sport experience is, not just for them, but for the rest of the world. The NBA did something very unique. They created the bubble. They brought their athletes together. They kept them in this bubble to prevent them from being infected by the virus. And I think a lot of other sports took that and they developed it for their sport. And that has created a new way of moving forward. And we're learning so many unique ways of videoing, broadcasting, so many unique ways of training that is just going to change this whole sport community, sport world. So the pandemic leading up to the Tokyo Olympic Games has given these athletes another year of finding ways to be creative and tenacious. The Olympic Committee, the IOC, and TOCOG has developed certain guidelines and rules that the athletes will have to follow. And if they're not prepared for those guidelines, their performance will go down. So I believe we're going to see better performances than we have ever before, because there's a unique and challenging impediment for these Olympic Games. And whenever a great athlete faces an impediment, they get better. Because why? They've tested their mettle. Malev said something unique. He said that you have to prove yourself despite the adversity. It's the same thing, right? Testing your mettle. You have to prove yourself. And that's what sport is all about. That's why I think these Olympic Games are going to be very, very good, very, very exciting, because the athletes will be able to develop these new ways of being better. And we see that in every sport that has created new guidelines for success. So I don't see this leading up to the Tokyo Games as being a bad thing. I see this as being a way of changing sport for the better. So I'm open for challenges to that theory, and I'm open to any questions that you have about it.
Allow me, Khaled, to jump in. I want to ask you, Willie, now the problem is not only the athletes, the good athletes, maybe in the States or Canada or some countries, they have the advantage to go and to practice and to do the bubble. But now, let's say some African countries, some Middle Eastern countries, the vaccine is not yet received. Also, the athletes, they don't have the good facility to train, and they have a lot of challenges. And now, some of them, even if they want to go to the Olympics by July, maybe it will be unfair for them that some players, they have the chance and the advantages to be training better, and some other athletes, they don't have that chance to receive the same situation or the same advantage to train better. So I feel that the principle of the fair play is missing somehow. But when you say it in a way that if we face the challenges, it will be great for the athletes to overcome their challenges and to become better. So how you see about that? How do you think that those countries should do, or those athletes from those countries should do?
So one thing is that this dichotomy has always been there, correct? The United States, Great Britain, Germany, some of these larger and wealthier and sport-minded countries have always had an advantage over countries that don't have similar philosophies about sport. Yeah. And so that hasn't changed. What is different now is that the pandemic is here, and that difference may be stretching out. But I've never during this conversation is the same conversation we have, pandemic or no pandemic, right? Yeah. That's why we have an ACSA. That's why we're constantly fighting for equality throughout the world of sport. But what I'm trying to say here today is that the athletes will find a way through that adversity. Now, I sit on the council, the governing body, the International Federation for Athletics, and we have made certain changes to qualifying and certain changes to our rules in order to help protect countries whose athletes don't have the advantage that, say, the United States has. And we did that because we, again, want to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind. It's incumbent upon us to bring more people into our sport. So the answer to your question from me, Samar, is, again, we have to try and level the playing field, but we've been trying to do that regardless of whether it's pandemic or not. And I see every Olympic Games more and more participation from nations that I never would have thought would have success in the Olympic Games, especially because of the might and the power of certain other countries. But the playing field is getting leveled, not because the adversity that these athletes from these other countries are facing. And we are also putting a lot of effort into helping women become more successful in countries which don't have a programs for women in sport. But we're seeing more and more countries start to add to their programs because we are pushing to make that happen. So you will see, Samer, greater participation, I think, in Tokyo than you have in prior Olympic Games with athletes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's look at it from that perspective. Mr. Kamal, from your experience and how you progressed in life, where you are now versus where you started, how would you see it? The road to Olympics being an experience for athletes who possibly don't even see the potential in themselves, but require organizations like ACSA and others to enable them see where they fit in this journey and how they can make it.
Away from Tokyo Olympics, like in general, participating into the Olympics, it's a like long journey because he has to be qualified and then go to the Olympics. It's not just going to the Olympics directly. He has to go through a lot of challenges, a lot of competitions, and to win a lot of matches, either in individual sports or in team sports. So there is a lot of qualifications. So actually the hard work is the key of everything. So if the athletes do hard work, even if living in any place, now with the new technology, with media, with the way he can, on my time, there was no videos, YouTube or nothing. I don't know the player, how they play before. Now, you just Google the name, you find his videos so you can know how you can compete with him. Before, I was competing with someone, I don't know even how he kick or how he practiced in Taekwondo. I don't know anything about it. That's right. So now it's different. Life is different. So now with the new technologies, and I think the athletes have a bigger chance. If they want to be good in the Olympics, they can work on themselves harder, and they can make it to achieve their goals. So this is how I see the journey now. If only needs hard work, there is a lot of competition there, but they can do it if they work hard, following up and using the advantages that we have now in the field. Even now, the coach can video from their mobile, and then he can show the player how his technique. Before, maybe Willie can tell me, so when he do the triple jump, how he will know how his mistake was on the video or on the, he has to wait, he have to get a video, and then you have to go back, and there is a big VHS, I don't know how to put it in the machine. So it's totally different now. So it's easier now to improve. So this is why the records are better in the swimming, in the track and field, in all sports. You can see the numbers and the achievements is much better. However, I have like some questions received by others, so I want to give them the chance. So if you don't mind, his name is Muhammad. Muhammad, he asked Muhammad Hasiba. He is from Mamlaka TV. He have a question. He said that coronavirus made some athletes lose interest or lose the ambitious to participate in the Olympics. And also some association and some organizations, they even stop working on that because of the lockdowns and all of such things in some countries. So do you think that canceling the Olympics or canceling the championships and some qualifications also was canceled or delayed, or do you think that the Olympics should be run and not to canceled, or should be postponed or something like that? I move this question to Willie.
Well, thank you, Mohammed, for that question. A very interesting question that I wish we had more time to discuss, but my direct answer is I don't believe they should cancel the Olympic Games. But I would have a lot of questions about those athletes who actually give up. It is hard for me to believe, and I'm sure you're much more knowledgeable than I, that an athlete who was spending most of their life training to be an Olympian would give up. So you know, it's just like my experience. I went 8 years of trying to, more than that, 12 years of trying to make an Olympic team, having success, but not being able to compete. That to me is...
It's 11 o'clock.
Oh, please keep going. It's just a reminder. Please keep going.
I mean, I'm pretty much, I don't know how else to answer the question, but to say that even, and maybe this is a US thing, I don't know, but they did a study back in the 60s of athletes, just athletes who were training, and they asked them, what would you do to make an Olympic Games? And every single one of them said they would almost die to make an Olympic Games. You know, it was like 87% of the people said, I would die to make an Olympic Games. You know, if they said they would give you this pill, you can win the Olympic game, or you could go to and be an Olympian, but after you go to the Olympic Games, you would die. They said they would take the pill.
Wow.
You know, and it's because this is the mentality you have to have in order to be a great success. I mean, look at Samar. You can't be wishy-washy about it. You have to give of yourself like no one else in order to be an Olympian.